Lena Lawrence had just stepped into her new apartment when the ceiling fan made a loud groan and sputtered to a stop. "Perfect," she muttered, dropping her leather work bag on the scuffed hardwood floor. Her heels clicked as she walked toward the window, pushing it open for air. The view? A narrow alley and a rusty dumpster. Definitely not the skyline of Manhattan she'd been used to. But this wasn't about comfort. It was about disappearing. After 10 years of running one of the country's fastest-growing tech companies, Lena was done. Done with boardroom battles, investors breathing down her neck, and fake smiles at every gala. So she sold her shares, stepped down as CEO, and vanished from New York with nothing but a duffel bag, her laptop, and a lease for a modest 2-bedroom in a quiet Seattle neighborhood. The place was humble. She hadn't lived like this since college. No concierge, no private elevator, just the sound of kids laughing in the courtyard and the smell of someone grilling burgers. She had no idea that someone was about to change everything. "Careful with the stairs," a deep voice called out from outside. Lena leaned out her window and spotted a man with messy brown hair and broad shoulders jogging down the walkway, holding the hand of a small boy in a dinosaur hoodie. "Daddy, I'm gonna fall," the kid squealed, laughing. "You've got this, buddy. Just hold tight," the man said, steadying him. They were heading toward the neighboring apartment, her neighboring apartment. A single dad. Of course. The man looked up, caught her watching, and nodded politely. "Hey, you must be the new tenant." Lena straightened. "Yeah, I just moved in." "Welcome, I'm Jack Lawson. That's my son, Jude." Jude waved at her with his entire arm. "Hi, are you a mom?" Lena blinked. Nope, just me." "Do you have any toys?" Jude asked seriously. Jack chuckled. "Jude." "It's okay," Lena said, smiling. "Afraid I left them all behind." "Guess we'll have to share ours," Jack said, unlocking his door. "Let us know if you need anything." She watched them disappear inside. A single dad with a kid who wore mismatched socks and asked strangers about toys. It was oddly nice. The next morning, Lena had her first reality check. No coffee, no groceries, and no idea where anything was in the city. She opened her door and nearly ran into Jack, who was kneeling with Jude, tying the boy's shoes. "Oh, morning," she said, startled. "Morning," he replied, standing. "You look like someone who hasn't had caffeine yet." "That obvious?" "There's a coffee shop 2 blocks down. I'm walking Jude to preschool. Wanna join?" She hesitated. She didn't do morning walks or casual chats with neighbors. But something about the way Jack looked at her calm, grounded, real made her nod. "Sure." As they walked, Jude chattered nonstop about dinosaurs and a classmate named Mia who always stole his crayons. Jack listened patiently, tossing in the occasional wow or really, like it was the most important thing in the world. Lena found herself smiling more than she had in weeks. After dropping Jude off, Jack walked her to the cafe. "I've never seen someone order espresso like it's a survival tool," he teased as she took her first sip. "You've never led a company through 3 product launches in a week. You're a CEO." "Was," she said quickly, "not anymore." He didn't press, just nodded like he understood that people had reasons for walking away from big things. They started running into each other more. In the hallway, at the mailbox, at the tiny laundry room where she once found Jude sitting on top of a dryer eating a popsicle. Lena didn't mean to care. She liked her space, her quiet. But Jack was always there, with some kind of warmth she didn't know she'd needed. One evening, she came home late from a freelance meeting and saw a note taped to her door. "You look tired, brought dinner. Jack." She opened her door to find a bag of takeout from a Thai place and a little sticky note that said, "Extra spicy. like your attitude." She laughed, actually laughed, and shook her head. Over the next few weeks, it became a rhythm. She helped Jude with his art projects when Jack needed to make work calls. Jack fixed her leaky faucet with tools that looked older than both of them. They had dinner once, then twice, then more often than not. One night, she caught herself staring at Jack while he helped Jude brush his teeth. He wasn't flashy. He didn't wear suits or drive an imported car. His hands were rough, his shirts worn, and he laughed with his whole face. But he looked at her like she mattered, like he saw her. Not the CEO, not the success story, just Lena. She'd spent 10 years chasing power. And now, sitting on a thrift store couch beside a single dad and his sleepy kid, she felt more at peace than she ever had in a penthouse. But nothing gold stays, right? It was a Monday. Lena had just stepped out of the shower when she heard a knock. She opened the door in a robe, surprised to see Jack on the other side looking off. "I need to ask you something," he said. Her stomach flipped. "Okay. Are you the Lena Lawrence who ran L-Tech?" She froze. "How do you know that?" He held up a glossy magazine, her face on the cover. An article titled "The Woman Who Walked Away." "Jude's teacher had this," Jack said quietly. "She brought it up after school." Lena swallowed. "I didn't lie. I just didn't bring it up." "Why?" "Because I wanted something real. I didn't want you treating me like I'm a headline." Jack stepped back. "So you moved into a rundown apartment in the middle of nowhere to what? Hide?" "Yes," she said honestly. "I needed to breathe." He stared at her. "And what happens when you decide to stop breathing here?" That hurt. Before she could answer, Jude's voice called from next door. "Dad." Jack looked at her one last time. "I have to go." And just like that, the warmth was gone. She closed the door and leaned against it, heart racing. She hadn't meant to fall, but she had. And now, she had no idea if he'd catch her. Lena didn't leave her apartment for 2 days. She told herself she was busy with freelance deadlines, that she needed time to think, that she didn't care what Jack thought. But every time she opened her laptop, her eyes drifted to the empty space where his note used to be taped. Her fingers hovered over her phone more than once, until she finally shoved it in a drawer. She wasn't used to being questioned like that, judged without context. She'd built an empire from scratch. But none of that seemed to matter when someone looked at her like she was a stranger again. By the 3rd day, she ran out of excuses and groceries. The corner market was barely a 10-minute walk, but it felt like crossing enemy lines. She kept her head down, sunglasses on, grabbed a basket, and moved fast. She was halfway through the cereal aisle when she felt a tug on her sleeve. "Lena." She turned. Jude stood beside her, holding a box of animal crackers and blinking up at her with confused eyes. "Why didn't you come over anymore?" Her throat tightened. "Hey, buddy, I've been busy working." Jack appeared a second later, his expression unreadable. He gave a nod, not cold but distant. Jude looked between them and frowned. "I asked Daddy if you were mad. He said you needed space, but I made you a picture." Jack gave a quiet sigh. "Jude." "It's okay," Lena said. "I'd love to see it." Jude beamed and reached into his little backpack, pulling out a wrinkled drawing of a robot with glitter glued to its chest. In shaky letters, it read, "To Lena, you're cool, from Jude." She ran her thumb gently over the glitter. "This is amazing, thank you." Jude leaned in to whisper. The glue exploded. It got on Daddy's shirt. Jack cleared his throat. "We should let you finish shopping." "Sure," she said, forcing a smile. "Thanks for the picture, Jude." As they walked away, Jude turned and waved. Jack didn't. Back at her apartment, Lena placed the drawing on her fridge with a magnet shaped like a cat. It stared back at her every time she walked into the kitchen. That night, she lay on the couch, the TV playing something forgettable in the background. She didn't even realize she dozed off until a loud knock jolted her awake. She opened the door, heart pounding. Jack stood there, rain on his jacket, his jaw tight. "I shouldn't have come at you like that." She blinked. "What?" "The magazine, the questions. I didn't handle it right." Her grip tightened on the doorknob. "You made it pretty clear what you thought." "I was surprised, Lena, not angry. He ran a hand through his hair. "I've been around people who lie, who pretend. I've had to be careful for Jude." She stepped back, letting him inside. "I wasn't pretending. I just needed to be somewhere, didn't have to explain myself every day." He glanced around her apartment like it was the first time he was really seeing it. "This doesn't look like hiding. It looks like starting over." She crossed her arms. "You think I sold my company for fun?" "No," he said. "I think you were drowning and you finally stopped kicking." The silence stretched between them. "I'm sorry," he said again, softer this time. "You didn't owe me your resume. I acted like you did." Her eyes stung. "I didn't expect you to find out, not like that." "I know." "I liked not being her around you," she said. "Just being me." "I liked you that way too," he said, stepping closer. "Still do." Her breath caught. Outside, thunder rolled low across the sky. Jack looked down, his voice rough. "I don't know what this is between us, but I want to figure it out." She hesitated. "Are you sure? It's not just me you'd be letting in." "I know," he said, "and I don't take that lightly." She nodded slowly. "Neither do I." He took her hand, warm and steady. "Come over tomorrow," he said. "Jude's building a rocket out of cardboard boxes. He'll need a co-pilot." "I'm not great with glue," she said, managing a smile. He squeezed her hand. "Neither am I." The next day, she knocked on his door. Jude answered wearing a colander on his head and a cape made from a pillowcase. They spent the afternoon taping boxes together, Jude narrating a space mission, while Jack handed Lena scissors and smiled every time their fingers brushed. Later, while Jude napped on the couch, Jack and Lena sat on the floor, their knees touching. "Do you miss it?" he asked quietly. "Sometimes," she said, "but not the way I thought I would." "What do you miss most?" "Having people believe in me without question." He looked at her, eyes steady. "I believe in you." She didn't answer, just leaned against his shoulder, letting the silence fill with something that felt like trust. He rested his chin lightly on her head. "You ever think about what comes next?" "Sometimes," she whispered, "but I don't need to know yet." They stayed there until the light faded, until Jude stirred and asked for grilled cheese, until the quiet between them turned into something that didn't need words. And for the first time in a long time, Lena didn't feel like she was running. The following Friday, Lena stood in front of her open closet, staring at the limited wardrobe she'd brought with her from New York. Most of it was sharp silhouettes and structured fabrics clothes that made statements in boardrooms, not backyards. But tonight wasn't about polished impressions. Jack had invited her over for dinner, nothing fancy, just burgers on the grill and whatever Jude decides is edible. His words, not hers. She chose a soft linen blouse and jeans, something she'd never wear to a meeting, but somehow felt right now. As she stepped out into the dusky corridor, the scent of something charred and sweet drifted from Jack's patio. "You're just in time," he said as he opened the sliding glass door that connected their 2 units' tiny outdoor spaces. Jude stood on a chair, holding a plastic spatula like it was a sword. "I'm the burger boss." Lena laughed. "Should I be scared?" "Only if you like your food not burnt," Jack said, flipping something on the grill with exaggerated care. "He's taken over the kitchen, and now the backyard too." I'm building a restaurant, Jude announced, jumping off the chair. It's called Fire Burgers, and you can't eat here unless you pay me in chocolate chips. Lena knelt beside him. That seems like a fair price. Jack poured her a drink iced tea with lemon and handed it over. I didn't think to warn you, but our chef has very specific rules. She looked around the patio. There were string lights overhead, clearly old but glowing softly, and a battered picnic table with mismatched chairs. It was the kind of place where time slowed down. As they sat down to eat, Jude launched into a story about a classmate who had swallowed a marble on purpose, which led to a long debate about what exactly happened in someone's stomach. Jack listened with a straight face, only occasionally glancing at Lena with an expression that said, "This is my life now." After dinner, Jack handed Jude a flashlight and sent him to the living room to build a pillow fort planet. When the door slid shut behind him, the air shifted. "You okay?" Jack asked, leaning back against the rail. She looked out at the fading sky. "I've been thinking about applying for something." He raised an eyebrow. "Something?" "There's a startup accelerator in Portland. They're looking for mentors. It's part-time, remote, and I'd be working with new founders." He nodded slowly. "That sounds like a thing you're excited about." "I am, but I'm also scared that if I start again, I won't know how to stop." Jack reached for her hand, his thumb brushing over her knuckles. "You don't have to choose between ambition and peace. You just have to decide what enough looks like now." She looked at him. "What does enough look like for you?" He hesitated for the first time that evening. "I used to think it was a house and a job that didn't keep me up at night. After Jude's mom left, it became about stability, something predictable." Lena's pulse quickened. "And now?" He held her gaze. "Now it's changing, slowly, because being around you doesn't feel unpredictable, it feels alive." She felt her chest tighten. "I didn't come here to be someone's second chance." "You're not," he said simply. "You're the first thing in a long time that's made me want more." They stood there in silence, their hands linked, as the string lights above them swayed with the wind. The following week, she submitted her application to the accelerator. She didn't tell Jack right away. Instead, she started waking up earlier, taking longer walks, and letting herself explore the neighborhood with fresh eyes. She discovered a bookstore wedged between a laundromat and a florist. The owner, a woman in her 70s, had a habit of recommending novels based on mood rather than genre. One afternoon, Lena brought Jude there while Jack worked a late shift. He picked out a book about space pirates and convinced the owner to give him a paper bag, so it feels official. By the time Jack came to pick him up, Jude was fast asleep on a beanbag chair, clutching the book to his chest. Jack looked down at his son, then at Lena. "You're good with him." She shrugged, brushing a strand of hair behind her ear. "He's easy to love." Jack's voice dropped. "So are you." Her breath caught, but she didn't respond. "Not yet." The next morning, she found a white envelope slipped under her door. Inside was a printed email. Her application had been accepted. She stared at it, waiting for the old feeling to return, the surge of adrenaline, the buzz of proving something. But instead, what she felt was calm. She walked next door without thinking. Jack opened the door in a t-shirt and jeans, coffee in hand. "Morning." She held up the letter. "I got in." He grinned. "That's amazing." "I need to go to Portland next weekend, just for a few days to meet the team." He nodded. "Jude and I will miss you." She hesitated. "You'd be okay with me doing this?" "Would you be okay if I said no?" She raised an eyebrow. "I'd go anyway." He laughed. "Good, because I'd never ask you not to." A week later, she boarded a train at sunrise. Jack and Jude stood on the platform, waving until she was out of sight. She hadn't expected the ache in her chest. She hadn't expected to look back. But she did. And when Jack smiled through the window, she knew. This wasn't the end of something. It was the beginning. The train ride back from Portland gave Lena more clarity than she expected. Watching the trees blur past the window, she realized something had shifted not just in her career, but in herself. She was no longer running from anything. She was choosing, and what she wanted more than another title was to build something that wouldn't collapse the moment she stopped holding her breath. When she stepped off the platform, Jack was waiting with Jude beside him, both holding handmade signs. Jude said, "Welcome back, Space Boss," complete with glitter and stars. Jack said nothing, just her name written in bold black marker, underlined once. She didn't hesitate. She walked straight into Jack's arms and buried her face against his chest. He didn't say anything at first, just held her tighter than he ever had before. "I missed you," she whispered. "Yeah," he said softly. "We made pancakes, they were terrible." Jude tugged her sleeve. "I saved you one, it's in the freezer. It has a bite out of it, but just one." Lena laughed, her throat tight. "You're too good to me." "We're a team," Jude declared, taking her hand. Jack didn't let go of the other one. Back at the apartment, everything felt the same, but nothing did. Her fridge was still mostly empty, her inbox still full. But the way Jack brushed her hair behind her ear as she unpacked, the way Jude showed her a new drawing he'd made of their cardboard rocket, those moments were louder now than the silence she used to live in. That night, after Jude went to bed, Lena sat out on the patio with Jack. The string lights buzzed faintly overhead, casting soft circles on the concrete floor. "I got offered a longer contract," she said, watching the light ripple in her tea. "It's flexible, remote, but it's more involved than what I thought." Jack leaned back, his arm draped along the back of the bench where she sat. "Does it feel right?" "It feels like something I'd be proud of," she said, "but I don't want to lose this. Not again." "You won't," he said, "unless you stop choosing it." She turned, eyes searching his. "I've always been good at building things, but they were always for other people. This what we have, it feels like the first thing I want to build for myself." He took her hand, tracing her fingers with his thumb. "Then let's build it." The words were simple, but they landed with a weight that settled deep in her chest, the kind of weight that didn't crush, but grounded. A week later, Jack invited her and Jude out on a Saturday morning. She thought it might be a trip to the park, or maybe a diner with sticky menus and bottomless coffee. But instead, he drove them 20 minutes outside the city, down a winding road lined with evergreens. Lena leaned forward from the passenger seat. "Where are we going?" "You'll see," Jack said, eyes on the road but a quiet anticipation in his voice. Jude kicked his feet in the back seat. "It's a surprise. I helped pick it." When they pulled into the gravel driveway, Lena stared. A small white house sat at the edge of a wide field with a wraparound porch and a red mailbox leaning slightly to the side. The shutters needed paint. The fence was lopsided, but the windows gleamed and the air smelled like cedar. Jack turned off the ignition. "I found this place a while ago. I wasn't sure when or if I'd be ready for something more permanent, but then you came along." Lena's heart stumbled. "Jack." "I put in an offer yesterday. It's not a mansion. There's no doorman, but there's space. For Jude, for you, for whatever this becomes." She stepped out of the car and walked slowly toward the porch. The wood creaked under her feet. The wind rustled through the trees. She turned back to him. "Why now?" He stepped up beside her. "Because kept waiting for the right time. And then I realized the right time's just the moment you stop waiting." She looked out at the field, the house, the boy twirling in circles beside the car with a stick in his hand like it was a sword. And then she looked at Jack. "I don't need perfect," she said. "I need real." He reached into his coat pocket and pulled out a small velvet box. Her breath caught. He opened it not with a grand speech, but a quiet certainty. Inside was a simple gold ring. No diamonds, no sparkle, just a smooth band, like a promise that didn't need decoration. I'm not asking you to give up anything. I'm asking if you'll keep choosing us, every day, just like a will. She didn't speak. She didn't need to. She took the box from his hand, slipped the ring onto her finger, and kissed him like every answer she'd ever needed lived in that moment. Behind them, Jude clapped. Are we getting married now? Can I wear a cape? Jack laughed against her mouth. Lena turned toward the boy and grinned. Only if you promise not to upstage me. The ceremony came 2 months later. It wasn't held in a cathedral or a ballroom. It happened on the porch of the White House, the wind carrying the scent of wildflowers and pine. Jude stood proudly between them in a navy suit and a cape, holding the rings on a pillow he'd insisted on decorating himself. There were no vows read from paper, just words spoken carefully, with tears and laughter and promises that didn't rely on perfect timing or grand illusions. Later, as the sun dipped behind the trees, Jack pulled Lena into a slow dance on the grass. No music, just the sound of the wind and Jude's laughter echoing from the tire swing someone had hung that morning. I never thought this was where I'd end up, she said quietly, leaning her head on his shoulder. Jack kissed her forehead. Neither did I. But now that I'm here, she whispered, I can't imagine anything else. And neither of them ever needed to. The first spring in the White House brought with it an unfamiliar kind of stillness, the kind that didn't demand anything from Lena except her presence. The porch swing creaked gently in the breeze, its rhythm steady as she leaned back with her laptop on her knees, Jude's laughter echoing from the backyard, where he and 2 neighbor kids were digging an elaborate tunnel for imaginary dragons. Jack stepped out with a mug in one hand and a folded envelope in the other. He handed her the tea first, then crouched beside her to place the envelope on her lap. What's this? She asked, eyeing the handwriting on the front. He smiled, tucking a strand of her hair behind her ear. From the accelerator. It came this morning. She set the laptop aside and opened it, her eyes scanning the page. Her brows lifted. They want me to lead the innovation cohort for the next year. Fully remote, but they're offering equity and leadership. Jack watched her face carefully. Is it something you want? Lena folded the letter and rested it on her lap. It's something I never thought I'd want again, but now, yes, I do. Then take it, he said without hesitation. We'll make it work. She leaned into him, letting her cheek rest against his. I love that you never ask me to shrink. You couldn't if you tried, he said, kissing the top of her head. Inside, the house smelled faintly of cinnamon and lemon oil. Things had changed gradually over the past few months. Rooms painted in soft earth tones, bookshelves filled with a mix of children's picture books and Lena's growing collection of indie novels, a framed drawing from Jude that read Team Lawson Lena in multicolored crayon. They never made a formal announcement, but the neighborhood just seemed to know. Invitations to barbecues started arriving. Jude was asked to join a soccer team, and Lena found herself invited to a local women's entrepreneur panel, not because of her past, but because of how present she was now. One evening, after Jude had gone to sleep and Jack was organizing tools in the garage, Lena sat at the kitchen table and opened the wooden box she kept locked in the drawer under the stairs. Inside were remnants from her old life, a gold fountain pen given to her after her company's IPO, a set of cufflinks she never wore, and a postcard from Tokyo with a note she'd written to herself during her last international trip. She removed the pen and turned it in her hands, its weight familiar, grounding. Jack walked in, wiping his hands on a towel. Haven't seen that thing in a while. I used to think this pen was lucky, she said, but now I think it was just a reminder to keep going. Are you thinking of going back? He asked, not with fear but curiosity. She shook her head. Not in that way. I want to build again, but not alone, and not at the cost of everything else. He nodded, pulling out a chair beside her. You know, I used to think I'd never find someone who could love Jude like their own. Lena turned to him, her expression softening. He's not hard to love. I know, Jack said, but you didn't just step into our lives. You built something with us. You didn't have to, but you did. She reached for his hand. Neither of you were part of the plan, but you're the best thing that's ever happened to me. That night, they curled up on the couch, the fire flickering low as rain tapped gently against the windows. Jack pulled the blanket higher over her legs and rested his hand against her stomach. You ever think about having another? He asked quietly. Lena tilted her head toward him. You mean now that I've proven I can survive glitter glue and 3-hour bedtime negotiations? He chuckled, something like that. She thought about it for a moment. About late-night feedings, tiny socks, Jude becoming an older brother, the chaos and joy of expanding what they already had. I think I'd like that, she said. A few months later, as golden light spilled over the horizon, Lena stood barefoot on the porch, watching Jude teach the neighbor's dog how to sit. Jack stepped outside, wrapped his arms around her waist, and kissed her shoulder. I got an email, she said. The accelerator wants to feature me in their founder spotlight next month. You going to do it? He asked. I think so, she said, but only if you and Jude are in the photo with me. He grinned. Deal. The day they found out they were having a daughter, Jude insisted on building her a rocket ship out of cardboard before she was even born. He painted her name across it in bright blue letters. Ava. Lena watched from the doorway as Jack helped him cut the fins, his hands patient and sure. She felt it in her chest, that ache of gratitude so big it barely fit inside her. They were a family not built by plans or perfection, but by choosing each other over and over again. On a crisp autumn morning 2 years later, Lena stood in a sun-drenched kitchen while Ava gurgled in a high chair, flinging pieces of banana like confetti. Jude sat at the table, drawing something with intense focus. Jack leaned against the counter, sipping his coffee and watching her with that same quiet devotion he always had. Lena turned toward him, flower on her cheek, and smiled. You know, I used to think power looked like boardrooms and stock options. He raised an eyebrow, and now? Now I know it looks like this, she said. A kitchen full of chaos, a partner who knows when to show up, a life built from the ground up with no script. He walked over and pressed a kiss to her temple. You're the strongest person I know. And you're the best decision I ever made, she whispered. They didn't need anything else, not titles, not headlines, not validation from the outside world. What they had was rooted, steady, and bright. And as Ava squealed and Jude held up his newest, drawing a family of 4 flying through space in a glitter-covered cardboard rocket, Lena knew, without a doubt, they'd already found everything they'd ever need.